The biz.
Welcome back to another episode of Diving Deep with the Levs, here with What's the Biz 559. We are excited to continue the conversation, and we're going to take you back to the purpose of marriage this episode. I'm Lena, and this handsome guy to my left is
Jamaine. So we thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And so as my wife mentioned, we're just going to get straight into it. One of the things that we find when we talk to couples is they don't know what the purpose of marriage is. So when they get married, a lot of things can get in between them and they don't know how to navigate it. So when you think about the purpose of marriage, you think about what is the function of something, what the function of it is. And so opening the question up to my wife, honey, what is the purpose of marriage?
Okay, before that though, let me just explain. When you don't know the purpose of something, it's easy to take it for granted. So in dealing with marriage, it's all about oneness. The purpose of marriage is the two people coming together as one.
Absolutely. Straight to the point. My wife gonna leave y'all with a bunch of one-liners. She gets straight to the point. So I just want y'all to know that whenever she have a one-liner, get your pen, get your paper, write it down.
Listen.
Because it's something that's going to help you in the long run. So
I'm more street smart and he's book smart. So you're going to elaborate with all the things and all the terms.
let me clarify. She's never been in the streets
street smart.
a day in her life. So for her to say street smarts is inaccurate.
Whatever.
100%.
Haters going to hate.
Tell me something about the streets.
Listen, when you become one flesh...
And we're
it's a
one,
journey.
And we're one flesh.
We're one
so
flesh.
I know you ain't street.
Okay.
Tell the people how many fights you got in.
Listen, that's not
All
the
right.
point. Let's focus here. When you become one flesh, guys, it's a journey. It's not a destination. And a lot of people look at becoming one as this point of arrival. Like, okay, no, it's a journey. It's not something that just instantly happens when you get married.
Yeah, so this idea about oneness is both of the individuals coming together, learning how to live in harmony with one another, taking their individual personalities, taking their individual mindsets of how you were raised, what you learned, all your traumas, like learning how to integrate both of those so you can come together and learn how to operate together in harmony, peace, learning how to manage conflict, understanding who your partner is. And as my wife said, like when you become one, like when you have this oneness about you, the misconception is that there's an arrival point, and there's never an arrival point because you're always changing. If you're not changing, something around you is changing that's going to cause you to change. For example, how many people were affected by COVID? COVID caused a whole nation, a whole world to shift.
Yeah.
And it affected marriages, it affected families, and we had to learn how to pivot and adjust to it. So when it comes to this lifelong idea of oneness, there's always going to be a constant change. And so I remember when me and my wife first got married, like we were different than who we are now. Me and my wife, right before we got married, we used to go to Denny's and we used to go to the movies once a week. We're not going to say why or how we were able to do that. We're going to keep that for you.
Okay.
But when I look at, thank you, when I look at how we are now, we will not do that every week because it'll be irresponsible because we have kids. We have to make sure that if we do decide to do that, our kids are taken care of. Now we have more responsibilities. Back then we didn't. So this idea of oneness, now that we're parents, that adds another dynamic to it. And so we'll be grandparents one day. We will be far off along in our careers one day. And we want to make sure that you understand that there's this lifelong journey. And I think one of the other reasons what makes it so hard to become one is, in America in particular, the culture that we live in. America is a consumer capitalistic culture.
Yeah.
And what this does is there's always the next best thing. There's always the next trend. There's always the next, I don't want to fix it. I just want a new one mentality. And so with that, that has seeped into your marriage. And so whether you know it or not, naturally, like when you don't want to put up with a problem, some people who have a negative perception of their marriage, they want the next person. Or why can't we be like Jane and Joe? Like, why can't we do what they do? Why do you have to nag me so much? And so when you have that mentality, you're basically saying that I'm a consumer and I'm a part of the American culture. And what this does is it starts to pull at the cohesiveness of our relationship. And so I just want to bounce it back to you, honey. What is one way that you've learned how to be in sync, or this idea of oneness that you've introduced to your marriage?
I believe that us having mutual goals has been huge part of that becoming one. Every year we sit down, obviously we have to review our goals, but we set goals to make sure that we're on the same page about what it is that we want to see in our marriage and what we desire, and we have a goal to aim towards. But I believe that draws us closer because a lot of times we have our individual goals, careers, school for you, whatever the case may be. But when we come together, we get on the same page. Okay, this is what we want to see in our marriage, and it allows this cohesiveness and this harmony and this unity about what it is that we want to accomplish together. And without having that vision, then we would just be aiming, shooting in the air.
So it's possible for us to have two different visions for our personal lives and mesh those together.
Yeah.
Okay, so how do you cope with me being in school all the time?
I don't cope. It sucks.
Okay,
It's hard. It's hard, especially because I'm home with the kids. But the way that I view it is in this season, right? There are seasons. And in this season, my job is to be a support to you and a strength to you. And so however I can make sure that happens. So one of the ways that I help and aid in that support is allowing you time to do homework, to spend time with the Lord, to have time to yourself, giving you the space for what you need so that you can have a productive day and to be able to pass these classes. I take care of the kids while you're away. And so I feel like all of that is a part of that support that I provide to you. Make sure you eat, all the things. But
That's
I feel
good.
like that aids. And it's a good point that you say that, because when we think of marriage, a lot of times people think like it's 50-50. We believe that it's 100-100 that you pour into the marriage. But there are times where I may be coming up with 80 and you may be coming up with the 20, or maybe it's me coming in with 60 and you cover me and you come in with 40, whatever the case may be, to aid in that 100% because of the oneness in which we operate in.
Absolutely. And so just kind of piggybacking off what she said, like oneness for us also is her giving me space to be by myself. With her giving me space, like I'm rejuvenated, like I'm refueled. I can be a good dad. I can be a good husband.
Yes.
I'm a good person to be around. Like when I'm tired, like I don't want to be around nobody. And that's just how I operate. I get my energy from being by myself. And so when I'm around people, I can be my best self. And so
Let's talk about some of the ways, honey, that what makes it hard for people to mesh together in that
Okay.
oneness.
I think a big one is a lack of compromise.
Yeah.
I think when two people come together and they have these visions of what life is going to look like, they have these ideas of who their partner should be, I think they get caught in the idea of, I need you to be who I want you to be right now. And there's no wiggle room to get it wrong. And so I think with a lack of compromise, you expect the people to be perfect. And I don't think that's ideal.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking like, man, when you can't compromise, like you are fixed.
Yeah. And I love that you said that word specifically, because on the Empower Huddle, they're actually talking about having, well, in this series, they're discussing mindset, but having a fixed mindset. And a fixed mindset, of course, is one that's not willing to compromise, not willing to bend towards, is how I like to say it. And in marriage, that's absolutely necessary. I think another thing is just having different lifestyles. Like when you come into a marriage, into this oneness that you're now creating, you have, like you mentioned, like your traumas, your background that you're bringing into the marriage, and then I would have the same. And so not everything is conducive for the marriage that we come into the marriage with, right? And so it's up to us to decide how we want to build our marriage and the design and the way that we want our marriage to look like. And so we have to figure that out. Now, your lifestyle, I'll just be honest, when I first met my husband, before we got married, when he approached me, I was like, what you own? Like, you ain't the one. Like, you couldn't possibly be it, because his lifestyle was not lining up with what I saw for my future. But in marriage, obviously, we got on the same page. We got on the same page. But sometimes people come with two different lifestyle backgrounds, and they're not willing to change, or they're so fixed to where it's like, okay, well, this is just what it is. This is just how I am, and I'm not willing to change. And in marriage, I think you have to be open to that and open to allow yourself to create something different than what you've been handed in marriage or in the environment in which you come from.
Absolutely. And so for everyone out there who is trying to find a way to mesh, find a way to be more in harmony, finding a way to get unstuck from that situation that you're in, have a conversation.
Yeah.
Like, sometimes it may take having an outside conversation more so with like a professional, like a therapist or something like that, to help you unlock and get from behind what is keeping you blocked or locked in.
Yeah.
For the sake of having a better or more productive conversation with your partner. Because you don't want, and this is the thing, change and growth, both are can be very subtle. And if you don't consciously pay attention to, like, day in, day out, like, am I growing closer? Am I growing apart from my partner? Years later, that change can be very evident, but day in, day out, you did not notice it. Yeah. And so I need you all to be very cognizant of, you need to be intentional with how you connect, because if you're not, you don't want to be miserable in your marriage. Nobody gets married to be miserable. Yeah. People get married because they're happy, they found somebody who fulfills them, but over time, you start to pay more attention to the negatives, and that's not something that you need in order to get to the marriage you want or maintain the marriage you want. And so we just want to leave you with that as we're closing in on our time. Do you have any last words, honey, before we close?
No, I think you hit it off. That's good.
As always, we just want you to know that a thriving marriage is for you. So we'll see you here later on the next episode of Diving Deep with the Lives.